Every single film that you watch or will ever watch is political. Whether it's the politics of the filmmaker, the characters in the story, or how the film was made, you can trace some sort of ideology in every single film that you watch, even the made-for-TV movies or those awful and forgettable Netflix originals that pop up twice a month. In order to go further into this, I need to clarify that this is not my own made-up theory or random mumblings. The idea that all film is inherently political came from a 1971 essay written by Jean-Louis Comolli and Jean Nouroney in the popular French magazine Cahiers Du Cinema. The essay, titled Cinema, Ideology, Criticism, garnered a lot of attention, with its main point being that every film is political, inasmuch as it is determined by the ideology which produces it. The cinema is all the more thoroughly and completely determined because, unlike other arts or ideological systems, its very manufacture mobilizes powerful economic forces in a way that the production of literature does not. Let's bring in some examples to really break this loaded statement down. Let's first look at a very obvious one: Star Wars. Everybody loves Star Wars, but the conversation around Star Wars has been rather uninformed as of late. A lot of the viewers are upset because they believe the property is too political, or as most have come to call it, woke. SJW trash is also a funny term thrown around that I'm sure you're familiar with. But what some Star Wars fans are calling political are just casting decisions. Especially since the Obi-Wan Kenobi show has come out, we've seen their fury at a woman of color being a major character in the show. And this extends all the way back to the sequel trilogy, with Rey as the female protagonist. In 1977, when the first Star Wars movie was released, it was more adventurous and fun than most sci-fi movies of the 70s had been. While George Lucas took inspiration from 1930s serials and Kurosawa films, his work was far from apolitical fantasy schlock. His first film, THX 1138, imagines a future police state and directly takes excerpts from President Richard Nixon in its dialogue. It may not be surprising then to find allusions to World War II in the original Star Wars. There are many elements in the film that run directly with real-world events. Stormtroopers and Imperial architecture bring to mind Nazi Germany and the many rows of Nazi troops captured in Leni Riefenstahl's 1939 propaganda documentary Triumph of the Will. Looking through this lens, it's easy to see Emperor Palpatine as a stand-in for Adolf Hitler. However, in a transcript from J.W. Rensler's book, The Making of Star Wars: Return of the Jedi, a conversation between George Lucas and his co-writer Lawrence Kasdan is recorded. Kasdan asks if Palpatine was once a Jedi. Lucas responds, "No, he was a politician. Richard M. Nixon was his name. He subverted the Senate and finally took over and became an Imperial guy, and he was really evil, but he pretended to be a really nice guy." Furthermore, Lucas has stated in several interviews that Star Wars was originally conceived during the Vietnam War, with his story serving as a vessel for his feelings about America's involvement. This is displayed most obviously in Return of the Jedi, with the Ewoks serving as a stand-in for the Viet Cong. When both are faced down by a military force much larger and more technologically advanced than their own, they are able to achieve victory through knowledge of the forest around them and using their enemies' inexperience in their environment to their advantage. Lucas cements the United States as the empire in his story, condemning them as a large technological empire going after a small group of freedom fighters. Star Wars is a direct reaction and opposition to dictatorships and the horrors that the US were meaninglessly projecting onto Vietnam. Holding true to Comolli and Nouroney's thesis, Lucas's ideology, his sense of morality, bleeds out into what he's saying in his films. Film is a language, and the camera is a microphone. But like I said, this was the easy example. Let's turn to a film that might not immediately come to mind when discussing politics and film: Ratatouille. Like all Pixar films, it's geared towards teaching children valuable lessons. A lot of Pixar's films are about inclusion and unlearning norms in society that can be harmful. Ratatouille is no different. Think of the line, "Anyone can cook." Anyone. In the film, we have the female chef, Colette, who is constantly trying to prove herself as a great chef. And then there's Linguini, a witless wonder frantically throwing himself around the kitchen, and Remy, who has a passion for cooking but is the last creature you'd be expecting in the kitchen. Ratatouille is a display of progressive ideology, that anyone, anywhere, can do anything. And they use the allegory of a mouse cooking cuisine to explore that. Because if a rat, of all things, can cook a 5-star risotto, then anyone can, regardless of race, gender, or sexual orientation. This is an idea that the filmmakers of Ratatouille are trying to express, thus aligning the film politically with the left and its progressive thesis. Now, we can take a crack at Camoli and Nirvani's claim that is the ideology which produces a film. Stay with me, this gets a bit complicated. The ideology which produces a film is in reference to our economy, capitalism. Films are made in a capitalist fashion, so therefore the product, a film, is a commodity. In the Hollywood system, a movie is ordered, so to speak. A crew is assembled and paid for their labor, and labor produces the film, which is then sold to an audience. Therefore, the film is politically made because it was made to make the studio money. Fairly simple. Audiences want films, but it's in debate what they really want out of a film, because it boils down to an individual level. What does one individual want to gain from a film? What is their reality? Authors Camoli and Nirvani break this down as well. For all films are commodities and therefore are objects of trade, even those whose discourse is explicitly political. This merging of ideology and films is reflected in the first instance by the fact that audience demand and economic response have also been reduced to one and the same thing. Certainly, there is such thing as public demand, but what the audience wants means what the dominant ideology wants. To me, this is best reflected in Marvel Studios. The ideology of Marvel's audience is, we want to see X fight, meet, or appear in X. Marvel has it pretty easy as a company. They basically fill in the blanks. In their newest film, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, directed by Sam Raimi, John Krasinski cameos as Reed Richards. This was a popular fan casting for years that the filmmakers clearly were made aware of and made happen in the film. This scene isn't political in itself, but the way it was manufactured, how it happened, was. Because demand was, we want X in X, and Marvel supplied it because they knew it would make them money. And they did make money. Independent filmmakers are not exempt either. They still work within a system not all that different from the studios. But more often than not, independent films or art house films are explicitly political and given the chance to push their ideology in a clearer way. Or at least one would think it would be clear. But as years go by, it's becoming pretty apparent that media literacy, our ability to discern meaning and context in a piece of art such as film or literature, has been severely diminished. It seems audiences today are not concerned with understanding a film or thinking much about it past the exit doors of the theater. But the sooner we understand the concept that all film is political, the better we're going to understand the world and the people around us. I'll leave you with one last comment from Camoli and Nirvani's essay, which I think is extremely important to film. They say, cinema is one of the languages through which the world communicates itself to itself. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope you understand that all film is political now. If you want to read the essay in full that I was referencing throughout the video, I will link it below. And if you haven't checked out the podcast that I do every week with my good friend Isaac Udaj, I'll link that as well. Please subscribe, please give us a like, share with your friends and family or who you think would find this video interesting, and I'll see you in the next one.